you go, everybody. Let me get going here. Let's get some music on.
Presenting Benny Goodman and
There
his
we
music.
are. Get the chat up. Good morning, Jim. Good evening, I should say, huh? That would make a little more sense. Okay. Realizing how much I didn't get set up here in time. Hey, Kathleen and Octavio.
Benny Goodman, ladies and gentlemen, the man with the torrid clarinet and the even more torrid band who purveys assorted rhythms, all danceable, in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago. And first of all, one of Irving Berlin's greatest hits, Blue Skies.
Howdy, Kathleen. Hey, Mummy Brown over on YouTube. Hey, Laura. Yeah, no kitties tonight. We'll show some pictures. There's always new pictures of the cats. Yeah, just to make sure that they cover their obligations contractually, you know. I tried to get a good shot of them this morning, but I wasn't fast enough. Yeah, Octavio. Hey, Mystic Pizza. Hey, Eileen. Hey, everybody. Hey, Bridget and Mary Jo. But just to make sure, here's a Miles video. I love how he's really kind of dancing to the music right there. Swinging. Hey, Diane. Hey, John. Hey, everybody. Hey, Jim. Hey, everybody. Good evening. I am very excited to show you guys. I've got here right in front of me the ribbons for the Mysterian Pumpkin Contest. The Jack-o'-lantern contest we can see over at... I think I'm actually going to incorporate... There's going to be a whole new time travel pub crawl for Halloween this year, I think. Kathleen, the second tour of Graceland will be a whole different route depending on who all is on it. But it'll be one that focuses on true crime stories particularly. On Saturday. But if you've been on my tour, Graceland tours before, the 10:30 will be pretty much normal. I do intend for the Dead Ringers to show up. I'm in talks with them. I'm talking with some of our regulars to get a whole new one going. Hello. Did you call me August a second ago? Because August slipped away into a moment in time.
Benny Goodman presents Helen Ward singing With All My Heart.
Hey, Florecita. Hey, Megan. They're cleaning Eternal Silence, huh? Well, you gotta do that sooner or later. I don't know why they pick October for these things. But I guess they gotta have it ready for Open House Chicago tomorrow. Next week. Hey, Paula. Marita, I am just drinking some Jack Daniels. We're gonna get this guy out of the bottle yet. Hey, Heather. Hey, Mom. Oh, tomorrow at 5, I will be co-hosting Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez on WCPT 820. Hey, June. I say I love you dearly. I am yours sincerely with all my heart. Oh yeah, we got a ghost in the background. It looks like the ghost of Grimace, this thing. Telling all the miracles you came along. I'll tell the stars above you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome along. Haven't done this tour in a long time, it occurs to me. But I threw in a new one right at the beginning. Hey, Laura in Stanley, Idaho. Much more than potatoes in Idaho. Reagan used to sell a shirt with a picture of Iowa that said, "Greetings from Ohio, the potato state."
And gets a lot of rhythm out of Walk, Jenny Walk. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Speaking of supporting PBS, we're going to be doing another Chicago Mysteries presentation at the Peabody Mansion next Sunday. And I think Tom Skilling is actually going to be there this time. I love when I get to be on a bill with Tom Skilling. Is Ember still loving her spooky pillow? Is Ember still loving her spooky pillow? Now you tell me if Ember's still loving her spooky pillow. Ember got her shots this week. Or more of her shots. Yeah, Octavio. Yeah, I got all of my shots already. Oh, and Bob, yes, there is space for you at the 1 o'clock. Hey, Kathleen in the euphonium section, the trombones and tubas, copper-belled euphoniums. I actually was the one and only bass. I sang "You Got Trouble" at a at the Broadway sing-along bar, and the guy described it as a deep cut. Oh, come on, you kids nowadays. There was a guy there who was the much younger boyfriend of a Broadway producer who happened to be present that night, who had produced shows that I have seen, and he said that Grease Live on TV changed his life. I was like, what are you? Oh my God, he's like 12. All right, we're gonna let Benny Goodman do one more tune, then we'll get started properly here. Yeah, Jenna got 4 shots the other day. And a similar situation, Heather. Hey, Vicky. We're letting Benny Goodman finish up this tune before we get started up properly. And I show you guys the ribbons that are going to go for the prizes this year. Oh yeah, all those Music Man songs are... It's so couched in nostalgia that you don't notice how avant-garde it is. The way that it's written. The way the dialogue and the music seek into each other. And in and out of each other. Evening, Grandma Bell. Glad you made it, Lynn. We're just letting Benny Goodman finish up this tune. Hey, Jan. Well, you know, I'm fine whoever wins this playoff series. I'm a Brewers fan, too. The Brewers were very nice to me when the Cubs were not last year. Ricketts family.
Music by Benny Goodman is being presented from the Joseph Urban Room of the
Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. This was Benny Goodman live 194 years ago? just 94 years ago, not 100. I don't know what I am thinking right now. This Jack is really... Mr. Jack Daniels is whispering in my ear, clearly. So, all right, everybody, it is time that we go ahead and get started. I am Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours here with the Ghost of Grimace tonight. So, welcome along. I'm Adam Seltzer from Mysterious Chicago Tours, author of such books as Mysterious Chicago, the book, H.H. Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil, Ghosts of Chicago, now in a 10th anniversary edition, Just Kill Me, a novel about a ghost tour guide who makes places more haunted by killing people at them, The Smart Aleck's Guide to American History, Murder Maps USA, Graceland Cemetery, Chicago Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. This is too much of the Jack tonight. And the brand new Johann Hawk Chicago Serial Husband, which is also the subject of the new podcast, Tomb Snoopers, which I'm doing with Patty Vasquez. Patty Vasquez is a host on WCPT Radio. I will be co-hosting with her tomorrow, 5 p.m., 8:20 a.m. WCPT. You can also listen online. A lot of stuff to talk about in Chicago right now. All right, but we are going to be talking Chicago. I do want to show off, while I've got the full screen thing going here, I want to show off the ribbons. Now, every year, over on the Mysterious Chicago Regulars and Miles Fan Club Facebook page, I'm sure somebody can post the link to that. I'm not a member myself. That would be weird. But every year they have a jack-o'-lantern contest. And I am one of the people who gets to help judge the jack-o'-lantern contest. This year, I think we might even be able to incorporate the jack-o'-lantern contest into the brand new Halloween time travel pub crawl that I am putting together. So this year we got ribbons that have been made. Check this out. This is the first place ribbon on this fantastic orange herringbone. There is also one for second place in red and third place in white. So if you need some motivation to enter the Mysterious Chicago, the Mysterian Jack-o'-lantern contest, this is like the 5th annual one, too. There have been some fantastic entries over the years. What happens is myself, the effing crew, my family, will pick our top 3, assign a point value based on our picks, and then I will determine the first, second, and third place. Look at this. I want one of these on my wall. So, yeah, really, if you want motivation, this is a great motivation to join this pumpkin contest. So, anyway, tonight, yeah, Miles here. Here is Miles making his appearance for tonight. The white one is the best contrast here. Very cool to have. So, tonight we're going to be talking about River North, a neighborhood just above the Loop here in Chicago. You got the Loop, the main downtown area. Just above that is River North, which has been known for several different things. At one time it was very industrial. The 1950s, it was known as the cheapest place you could possibly live in Chicago. There was a portion of it that was called Smoky Hollow for a long time. Then in the 1970s, it was the place where all of the leather bars were. And now it is Dude Bro USA. It is the home of the Rock and Roll McDonald's. It is the home of a lot of nightclubs. It's really the Dude Bro district, even more so, I would say, than Wrigleyville. But all right, can someone share to enter on the other page after the show? Yes, please, somebody give more details. I know the deadline is, I think, going to be October 27th to get your jack-o'-lanterns entered. But all right, so let us venture into River North for some mansions and mysteries. There was a time when it was all residential, too, so a lot of old mansions from those days are still standing. We're going to start, really, right over here at the Kerryman. This is right at the corner of Clark and Ontario, just above the Rock and Roll McDonald's, across the street from the Portillos. There's a running gag that's been going around. There's been these pictures of the National Guard who've been sent to Chicago. It looks like if they went to Portillo's, they would switch sides immediately. I think we should get like these are the kind of jokes that are generally unacceptable, but I think we can get like a special dispensation at this point. But the Kerryman stands about on the spot, and I couldn't determine exactly which corner it was for sure, but during the Civil War, there was a place called Lippert's Saloon. It appears to have been run by a woman named Minnie Lippert. There were a number of union meetings there, but also, one day in 1862, there was a duel fought at Minnie Lippert's Saloon, right where the Kerryman is now. Now, one of the principals in it was formerly a president of a foreign country. It was Lorenz Brentano. Now, Lorenz Brentano grew up in Germany, where he was part of the 1848 revolutions, which ultimately failed. But there were all these liberal uprisings all over Germany at the time, and quite a number of these 48ers, as they came to be called, ended up in Chicago, and in particular ended up at Graceland Cemetery. Now, Lorenz Brentano himself was actually made the president of a free state at the time, one of the free states in the Free State of Baden. Now, this didn't last very long. Eventually, when the reactionary government took power back, they sentenced him to life in prison, but by then he had already had to flee. The revolutionaries had already decided that they didn't really trust him, so he ended up fleeing to Switzerland, from there to the U.S. Now, by 1862, he was running a German-language anti-slavery newspaper here in Chicago, but in the process of his duties, he wrote an article alleging that some of the groups of soldiers at Camp Douglas had groups of officers that had no military experience, which is a fair enough criticism. But one guy, L.J.J. Nissen, the quartermaster of that unit, was really mad, came up and tried to pick a fight with Lorenz Brentano right on Randolph Street. Ended up getting the bad end of Lorenz Brentano's cane. So he came and accosted him here, and he would have been like in between. This is him in the 40s. This is him in the 1870s. I don't have a shot of him in the 1860s. But he came up to him at Lippert's Saloon, and along with 3 of his friends, and challenged him to a fight. So Brentano pulled out a Bowie knife. But Quartermaster Nissen pulled out a revolver and shot Lorenz Brentano in the head. However, it was only a flesh wound. He was actually in pretty good shape. He would go on to be the head of the Board of Education in Chicago and later served in the U.S. House of Representatives. L.J.J. Nissen died of a morphine overdose in his office on Madison Street. So I always love finding stories about duels. There aren't that many of them in Chicago. Later in the 20th century, this place became the McGovern Brothers Liberty Inn, which was a supper club said to be family friendly, but these were their matchbooks. We actually accidentally ran over Mr. McGovern on one of our time travel pub crawls, you might recall. And later on, it became O'Banions, a punk club in the 1980s when River North was in much worse shape. Now, O'Banions was named after Dean O'Banion, who had actually worked at the McGovern Brothers as a singing waiter before becoming head of the North Side Mob in the early 1920s. So, it's kind of the heart of River North today. But we'll move over down the road from that. One story that I ran into in the newspaper one time and just got obsessed with for a bit. Over here at 6 East Huron Street. Now you can see there was an older building. This used to be all houses like this, townhouses and little mansionettes, all down East Huron. There's one of them that looked right like this. So we can kind of recreate it here. You can see the dome on the right-hand side of this older picture. You can see the left-hand side of the dome, and then the right-hand side of it in a modern picture. But you can see this townhouse in the middle of it. That became the headquarters in the 1960s of an organization called Finders Incorporated, the people who can find anything. Now, this was set up by a guy named Barry Ziggy Stone, who is seen here holding up a picture frame along with Del Close, the comedian who would go on to leave his skull in his will to the Goodman Theater. Now, so Finders was an organization he came up with that, at least according to the ads, really would find anything for anybody, using all the contacts that Ziggy Stone had, really as a comedian by trade. Like if you needed a violin stuffed with hot dogs, these were the people that you would call. If you needed a monkey who could play Monopoly, you would call Finders Incorporated. You needed like a black bear fang because you heard there was some tradition about giving the gifts of a black bear fang. This is the person that you would call. Now, according to one of the articles about it, they talked about needing to find out, figuring out what to do with this mystery bus. Their catalog of stuff that they found but couldn't use every year for sale. Now, I really wish I could get my hands on a copy of one of those. Now, they got this sculpture that they thought might be Louis Pasteur or something. I wondered if maybe it was an early draft of the bust for Martin Ryerson that is presently inside of his mausoleum at Graceland Cemetery. Maybe not supposed to show you that picture, but there it is. Now, actually, when I first found this, I got a hold of Ziggy Stone. He's living out in California now. I asked him about Finders Inc. He said he does have some of the catalogs up in storage someplace, but he kind of seemed like he thought that I was with the IRS or something. I was asking too many questions. But he did answer the phone when I called. I was pretty impressed with that. Now, teaching a monkey to play Monopoly is really not that hard. You just have to lay down the law right away. You say, like, listen, monkey. Getting $500 for landing on free parking is a house rule. Around here, we play based on the rules on the inside of the box. They'll get the gist. Right, just around the corner from there. Just around the corner from the site of Finders Incorporated is the old St. James Church, portions of which are relics from the Great Chicago Fire. This was a fire. This has been on the same spot since the 1860s. Abraham Lincoln actually attended services here when he came to Chicago after being elected president, but before journeying to Washington, D.C., he actually came to Chicago and attended a service at St. James, which is very unusual for Abraham Lincoln. He was not really a church-going man in general. But inside, there's only little bits that are still pre-fire. But inside of it is this memorial that was part of the altar before the Great Chicago Fire that was rescued. This is a memorial to service members who died in the Civil War, but were also congregants here at St. James. You can look at the pictures of it here. A lot of the names that I recognize, like Lucius Larrabee, who comes up on the Graceland Cemetery tour every now and then, has his name on the plaque in here. This is an old pre-fire relic, still standing there. Yeah, now covered in scaffolding. We'll move over here to 25 East Erie, round the bend, for this absolutely magnificent mansion by Ransom R. Cable. This guy was the president of the Rock Island and Pacific Railroad, got Congress to authorize, oh, that's a whole wrong button to push. We'll start that one over, I guess. Ransom Cable. President of the Rock Island Pacific Railroad got Congress to authorize a new bridge from over the Mississippi that connected Rock Island to Davenport. Without this guy, surely nobody else ever would have done that. We wouldn't have those quad cities. There'd just be the two cities on one side, two cities on the other. Sure. Gorgeous mansion designed by Henry Ives Cobb, later owned by Richard Dreyhouse, who died the first day that I was doing this tour. So possibly some bad luck here. Dreyhouse loved to do this kind of restorations. Here we've got not only the mansion, but also like the coach house, which is just about equally impressive. Inside all of this sculpture. This is just used as offices now. But for a long time, it was the John Carroll Funeral Home. One of the Lipstick Killer's victims had their funeral here. Now, John Carroll himself, the owner of the funeral home, had got to start driving the carriage with Lincoln's coffin in Michigan Avenue during the Lincoln's funeral. We get another shot of him across the street, just seeing how much of it is up there. Where there's this weird neighborhood full of nightclubs and also these old mansions. It's a fascinating neighborhood to wander around. And right across the street from it is the Dreyhouse Museum. It's another old mansion that the Dreyhouse restored. It was the old Samuel Mayo Nickerson mansion. Samuel Mayo is the guy's name. Later owned by Mr. Fisher, who was a namesake of the Fisher Building and this columbarium over at Graceland Cemetery. But on the inside, you can see how it looked in the days of Mr. Fisher. And they've got it restored to look about the same way now. Right by it, you can see to the right of it is the Murphy Memorial Building. This is an old part of the old old part of the old National Medical College, designed by Benjamin Campbell, who also designed the Iroquois Theater. You can see it looks very similar to it. It's almost exactly the same design. Now, this was a place where they used to train doctors. This may have been the building in question that they said in an old Tribune article about local ghost lore was haunted by the sound of grave robbers delivering the corpses they had stolen to this building. Now, this building's late enough that I'm not really sure how much that actually happened, though. And the article in question doesn't really give a date or anything. It just says, or a specific address. It just says it's on Erie Street. Now, there are some stories about dead bodies at another place on Erie Street. Down the way is a building that is now known as Flair House, built in 1883 by Marcus Devine, milk dealer. Sold to an ad agency in the 1960s. But right about here, right next door to the Hooters, is an alley in between Flair House and the Hooters. Now, Hooters has claimed to be haunted for a really long time. And for the longest time, they couldn't figure out what might be haunting it other than, I don't know, Great Chicago Fire, the mob used to have meetings in the basement, all the stuff that you come up with when you know your building is haunted, but you can't think of why. But it was mainly in the alley next to it. I did find, well, for one thing, there was a person who was frozen to death inside of this alley one time. But really what I found was, and this got me like retweeted by Hooters itself, a real claim to fame. Back in 1875, bodies were not really in use in Chicago, going back to grave robbing. By that time, the schools were getting enough bodies on their own, but there was still a market for dead bodies in places like Ann Arbor and Iowa City, where they had a big school but hadn't changed all the laws yet. So there was a barn right about where this alley is now, where grave robbers were stashing bodies that they had stolen in Chicago until they could be shipped to places like Iowa City and Ann Arbor. And this led to some very interesting articles when you compare it to the fact that it's a Hooters there now. These articles went into great detail about the beautiful dead naked woman that they found inside of this place eventually, like hard and stiff. Her face animated in an expression that would be used to express horror. But the staring eyes and parted lips made a Gorgon horror of the face that in life had been comely and attractive. We're going to move on from here a little bit. Past the old Jekyll and Hyde Club. Address of the Hooters, something like 600 something West Erie. No, it's not far as 600. This is an old building next door to the Excalibur Club, but it's 650. Let's cover 650 a little bit. We'll go back to it. We'll move up a little towards it. The old Hotel Raleigh. But on the spot where it now stands, right about here at 650, lived a guy by the name of Charles Guiteau at one point. Now, Charles Guiteau, a lawyer who was trying to get out of the New York Herald, had an office here as a lawyer. Now, this is a guy who just kind of failed his way through life. He moved to New York and got a job and tried to live with the Oneida Colony, which was a free love sect back in the mid-19th century. They believed that anybody could be in love with anybody else, but kind of changed their mind after they met Charles Guiteau. They found this guy completely unlovable. So he came back to Chicago, tried working as a fake lawyer and a fake preacher for a while. When he failed at both of those things, he decided to try the last refuge of a scoundrel, which of course is politics. But having failed at that too, he decided to get his revenge by assassinating President Garfield. And he would have failed at that too. He did shoot Garfield, but would have only really been a flesh wound, except that Garfield had these really incompetent doctors who kept poking him in the liver when they tried to get the bullet out. He died a very slow and agonizing death. This is his tomb. They've even got on the tomb, they've got this fresco of all the doctors surrounded poking him in the liver. It's a very weird thing. There's a lot of little weird touches about this tomb. We've been there on a couple of morning mini tours when I was in Cleveland. My favorite is on the inside, there's a box of Garfield brand laxative tea. Just what you need. We'll just move down a little bit from there to Excalibur. We best know this place as the Excalibur Club. Another Henry Ives Cobb joint. But built so much in the style of Henry Hobson Richardson that you could mistake it for a Henry Hobson Richardson in that Richardsonian Romanesque style. But this place was built initially, well, we now know it as Excalibur, but it's still got all these touches from back when it was the old Chicago Historical Museum. Now, one of the star attractions when they first opened this place was a skeleton that they said was the bones of Jean Lalime. Now, the story that goes behind these is when they were digging out where for the building where the Jazz Record Mart would eventually be, they happened to find a skeleton. And they were just kind of kicking this around. There was a story about like kids using the head to play kick the can. So one guy busted it, was like, wait, you can't do things like this. They got a lot of old heads together and decided that these might be the bones of Jean Lalime, an early settler who was murdered by John Kinsey, one of the other early settlers. Now, there was some question about whether it was really him or not. In fact, some of the people, like Ferdinand Peck, was part of the panel. You can never take too much seriously that Ferdinand Peck ever said. But they decided to donate these bones to the Chicago History Museum, who put them on display here inside of the building. Now, they are now still held by the Chicago Historical Society. I know the Chicago Mystery Show wanted to show them really badly, but they eventually decided, no, that might not be a good idea. Also, they're not really entirely sure that this is really Jean Lalime. It could be some member of the Potawatomi tribe, under which it might be scheduled, subject to reburial under the Native American Grave Repatriation Act. But for a long time, they were displayed right in this place. Yeah, it's now known as Tao. I've never been there. I know they had lots of weird stories about the place being haunted, but they could never come up with a coherent reason for why. I think their version of the story was the bones of Jean Lalime burned up in the Great Chicago Fire. They weren't even dug up until well after the Great Chicago Fire. It's one of those places the employees there definitely think that it's haunted, but they can't come up with a coherent story as to why. Just over nearby it is the Tree Studios building. Now, Tree Studios was, we'll walk around this a little bit, built by Judge Lambert Tree on land that used to belong to his father-in-law. His father-in-law had a house surrounded by a lot of yard here. During the Great Chicago Fire, a lot of people showed up thinking, all right, if we get into here that's surrounded by a yard, the fire won't burn this house. And then it did, in fact, burn that house. But there's a very interesting drawing of this is a kid named Justin Biederfield drew this. He ended up traveling along with Judge Lambert Tree as they fled away from the house, along with his beloved pet goat. Now, children's drawings from before 1900 are remarkably rare to start with. It's amazing that we've got this surviving. But eventually, this was the old H.H. McGee tomb. H.H. McGee was the father-in-law of Judge Lambert Tree. Now, initially, this was their tomb, but eventually Judge Lambert Tree sold it off to G.M. Stevens. But so he could have him buried up by the pond, which is a better idea structurally anyway. But these are some guardians of a baby that was left at the studios. Tree Studios was a place for artist studios. One day, somebody dropped off a baby, and the artist decided, let's keep it. We'll raise it to be an artist. They named it Baby Rembrandt. Eventually, it had its name shortened to James Vincent Whistler. I'm not really sure whatever happened to the baby. It eventually was adopted out. Now, there's an area around here that, according to the paperwork, used to be called McCormickville. It really was not. It was just some people said you could have called it McCormickville. But you can see the old Lowry's Steakhouse here, which recently closed down and left. They said that they were leaving the city because they were afraid of Black Lives Matter protesters. But which kind of makes sense because this is this used to be the home of L. Hamilton McCormick, one of the sons of the McCormick family. Now, L. Hamilton McCormick, you can see just a little bit of the original house still up there. There's new facades all over the place now. But for the longest time, it was a place where you could go to see puppet shows too. But before that, it was Leander McCormick's mansion. Leander McCormick, now, the McCormicks came up from Virginia, where their labor-saving devices, the mechanical reapers, were not really in demand as farm labor-saving devices in 1850. Virginia were not considered particularly useful. This was a family. William McCormick stopped going to church because they were making abolitionist sermons. Now, his nephew, L. Hamilton McCormick, wrote a book called Characterology and Exact Science, which expanded on phrenology to include things like, phrenology is the idea that you can tell a lot about a person by the bumps and ridges on their skull. Characterology expanded on that to include things like skin color. You can kind of guess where he was going with this. So we'll just skip over him. Largely, anyway. The old Leander Hamilton mansion is still standing as well. That would have been his father. Here's Leander looking all sad. Good friend of Robert E. Lee. I hope he was sad. It says here that it could have been, the neighborhood was called McCormickville. So many of the McCormicks lived there. Really, it's like decades later, somebody said it could have been called McCormickville. Nobody really said that. We've already been there. Let us move along over to Wells Street. This is a very cool thing. Right next to Prosico, which I have been told is haunted, right next to Prosico is this old building. You can still see like this right above the Mysterious Chicago logo, this orange sconce on the wall. Now, this building has been several things over the years, but most famously, it was the old Sparbaro Funeral Home. Now, this is where most of the big mafia funerals were held. This is a picture of Vinny the Schemer Drucci's funeral. Big sign that says VD. But if you look right behind it, you can see those sconces standing there. The same ones that you can see in the picture right there. This is run by a guy named John Sparbaro, who was also worked as a lawyer and also happened to be doing some bootlegging on the side as well. This is when Judge Sparbaro himself got bombed. His whole place got bombed out at one point. But there are some interesting things to mention here. One of them, we'll get a little bit closer. We can see those sconces a bit more. These are original from when this was a mob funeral. Cubs just had a 3-run homer in the playoffs. But being a funeral home, it is also a place where they used to have coroner's inquests, including one for Helen Deal, who I like talking about. She was lured to Chicago from a guy who was dating her and said he could get her a job there. That job turned out to be working in a massage parlor, which was not a massage parlor. So eventually she started fighting with him, pulled out a gun, and he said, "You don't have the guts to shoot me." Wrong thing to say. So they ended up having a coroner's inquest over that guy's body here at the old Sabarbaro funeral home. Helen Deal would not give her real name, which makes it kind of hard to look her up, but the grand jury decided that she had acted in self-defense. The state's attorney was pretty ticked off about this, but she was free to go. And just down the block and across from there, is a classic story of the 1970s. A bunch of Chicago Sun-Times reporters rented this place to turn into a bar, which they called the Mirage, Watering Hole and Pub. Watering Hole and Pub. I would think that's kind of the same thing, really. But these are 4 of the Sun-Times reporters who got involved in this, and really the idea with starting this pub was to see how many people expected a bribe, how much shady dealings went on at the time. And here they are in color. And here they are examining the leaky ceilings that never should have passed inspection. But here we have the fire inspector, photographed here, smoking a cigarette as he walked around inspecting for fire damage and accepting a bribe. Eventually, this led to a massive expose using some terms that we don't use anymore. Our bar uncovers payoffs and tax fraud. Payoff parade begins. Mirage clears fire inspection for $10. You see that leaky ceiling again? They only had to bribe the fire inspector $10. These people who lived off of bribes at the time worked off of the grocery store racket, low margin, high volume. Their bookkeeper specifically taught them how to do this sort of thing, and also told them never try to bribe a cop. You bribe a cop once, they're going to keep wanting to come back over and over again. But this changed a lot of the setups there. We'll also cover another building. I love this building, home of the best chicken Vesuvio in Chicago. It's an old Chicago varnish company. Presently Harry Carey's restaurant. Which originally was an old varnish company, but built in the Dutch Revival style by Henry Ives Cobb, and at one point owned by Frank the Enforcer Nitti. Some years back, they found that Frank the Enforcer Nitti still had a safe down in the basement. Now, Frank the Enforcer Nitti was the guy who took over for Capone after Capone went to jail. Not quite as good as staying away from these kind of places as Capone was. Let it be known, fire inspector is state, not Chicago. All right. But just down the road from that, viewable out the window, is the old courthouse building. And with the courthouse, I never even know which story to tell exactly. But we'll look around that. Right across from it is kind of a relic of the old days. TJ's Adult Bookstore is right across the street. Amazing that such places still exist. They used to be all over in River North. There were still quite a few more of them 20 years ago when I was first doing ghost tours. We had a lot of jokes about them. It's like, oh yeah, we do a lot of investigating down at the adult bookstore. But among the people put on trial in this place were Leopold and Loeb, the thrill killers of the 1920s. Among the people put on trial in here, Johann Haack. Al Capone was actually in the building. He had a meeting with some lawyers there. He was never put on trial in this building, I don't think, but he was at least in the building. And for real, too. I can't really cover too much. I do have a Capone talk coming up this winter, but I can't talk about it too much just yet. Johann Haack put on trial in here. And, of course, terrible Tommy O'Connor was both tried and jailed back over here. So right on the other side of this was the jail, where people would be hanged by the neck until they were dead. This is terrible Tommy O'Connor, who was arrested and got away many times, finally convicted of murder and sentenced to die, but then escaped along with a few other people and was never caught again. Now, this became an urban legend in Chicago. Like every reporter who worked for a major paper for the next 50 years, if they needed a day off, they could just say they had a tip about terrible Tommy O'Connor and had to go follow it up. Just about every reporter tried it at one time or another, according to some of them. But his sentence said he must be hanged by the neck until he was dead. But after he escaped, that was still on the book. So theoretically, if they ever caught him again, even years and years after they switched to the electric chair, by God, they were going to hang him. They kept the gallows in storage for over 50 years. Now, by then, a judge ruled that he must be dead by now anyway. But really, I don't think anybody really believed that if they'd actually caught him, they were really going to hang him by the neck until he was dead at that point. They would have come up with some kind of loophole. But yeah, that is one hell of a haircut he had. Also, Adolf Lutker, there's now a picture of him on the inside of the lobby of the place. And right back behind it, where the fire station is now, this is the jail, the site of the jail, where they used to hang people. This is the Boyce Building across the street by Holabird and Roche. Early example of the Chicago School of Architecture. But also just nearby here, worth showing this off too. The Bush Temple of Music Building, where Johann Hawk was brought to get a haircut. I'm just kind of noticing over on my deck here. I just noticed I got a scene called Coyotes. What would I have that for? I don't really see it. Well, all right, everybody. So, in any case, you can see I'm a little behind on fixing this one up. I want to just say thanks. A quick plug for the upcoming tours. We have got on Saturday, I've got 2 tours at Graceland Cemetery. There's the regular tour at 10:30 a.m., and then at 1 p.m. is a true crime tour. This will be a Graceland tour that focuses a little bit more on true crime stuff, taking a slightly different route than I normally take, covering things that I don't normally cover. Now, also, Sunday, just a few tickets left right now for the Rose Hill tour as well. Then we're getting back into next week is kind of my hell week. I got Frank Lloyd Wright stuff. I've got stuff at some old folks home. I've got the stuff at the zoo on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I don't know how sales are going for that, but it's all been sold out so far. So if you want to get on the zoo tour, you got to jump on that one right now. And in any case, everybody, we will just put the Benny Goodman back on and just hang out. I will take a second again to show off these awesome ribbons that have been created. These awesome wood cutouts for the Mysterium Pumpkin Contest. I am feeling this, Jack. Poured a little too much of this stuff. They know this is Jenna's work. So yeah, should you need any motivation to enter the contest this year, these are really cool. I love this fabric, this orange houndstooth. I think I can find a way to incorporate the pumpkin contest into the Halloween pub crawl this year, too. These are awesome. You got Miles coming out of a pumpkin. Very cool. This is wood. The plaques on either side are out of wood. Not wood. I am told not wood. MDF. They feel like wood, but they are MDF.
And that would put rhythm in the feet of a wooden Indian. That was the beautiful.
Yeah, definitely super talented.
Now,
correct.
The popular tune, Thanks a Million.
Laser engraved MDF. I hope you make it out. Yesterday they had it sold out. They allow 50 people on these things. It's more than I have on my cemetery tours. And it got to be like 4 minutes until it was time to start, and we only had 30 people checked in. I figured, well, there's a Cubs playoff game. Some people probably bought it and decided, For some reason, the November 1st Graceland tour is selling fast. I keep getting messages about ticket sales like, oh, all right. And then it turns out to be for November 1st, not the one coming up Saturday. That I wish were selling better. Also, we got a couple of ghost tours. Halloween night bus ghost tours are coming up. Yeah, all of a sudden, the November 1st tour, I guess it must have been listed on Meetup or something.
Down Harlem Way, they're all trucking. And here's Helen Ward to tell you all about her. Trucking.
Now I gotta look up what MDF is. Medium density fiberboard. So engineered wood panel, so it's still wood. Bottom of the second, 3-0 Cubs in the playoff game against the Brewers. Thank you for the update there. So I'm messaging some contacts trying to put together a new Halloween pub crawl. So I love our Halloween pub crawl, but it's time for a new one. Trucking. All over town.
You see them shuffling, trucking along. It's
It's tough for me to compete with the Cubs playoff game. Even in this modern era in which they've actually won a World Series. Still kind of getting my head around that. Dodgers beat the Phillies, I'm told. I have no idea who else is in the playoffs, to be honest. I just know that the Cubs are, and that will generally affect my business if the Cubs are in the playoffs in October. The Cubs doing October baseball doesn't really help me out much.
Benny Goodman presents On the Alamo.
Also, National Guard in Chicago probably does not really help me out much. One more reason not to have the Greavy Seals in town. Early bus tour in Rose Hill. Good picks, good picks. But I don't feel like I see you as much at Rose Hill. Sometimes, though. Yeah, yes, I've definitely seen you at Rose Hill. Well, all right, everybody. I feel like I've had enough to drink that it is probably time that I wrap things up, so I want to show you these incredible ribbons. We're going to go to the winners of the Mysterian Jack-O-Lantern contest this year. First, second, and third place. This incredible houndstooth orange. And laser engraved MDF. I hear Eternal Silence is wrapped like a mummy today. I will see that tomorrow. We will see that tomorrow on Find a Grave Friday. I'm kind of giving things away too much here, but we're planning to find somebody who I know is at Graceland Cemetery tomorrow. And I'm thinking might be unmarked, so we might have to just find like a general vicinity. This happens sometimes. But all right. So thanks everybody for joining me. There's a lot coming up. I should really save my voice as much as I can because I got so much next week. Thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours, telling you all to stay safe and stay strong. Stay spooky, everybody. Have a great night.